What we're witnessing, I think, is one of the most fascinating promotion races in recent League Two history. Because while you have Walsall running away with the league, 12 points clear at the top, and look set to cruise possibly to an automatic promotion spot and even the title, with that gap, despite the recall of star forward Nathan Lowe by Stoke City after his loan spell. I think the next 10 teams you could all throw a blanket over, and with a very narrow gap in quality between those sides. And I think they're all going to take points off one another, which means that probably for automatic promotion, it's going to be quite a low points tally required. It might even be in the 70s, the sort of high 70s, in terms of the points tally for automatic promotion, possibly early 80s. But it's not going to take much. And I think teams that are able to consistently churn out a lot of points and don't lose many games and don't concede many goals, I think they're going to be the teams that are going to be right up there. But lots of fascinating discussion about all the teams and probably question marks over all of them as we head into the second half of the season. So plenty to get stuck into then on this League Two podcast. Yes, welcome along to EFL Debate. You can get subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify. That would help us out a lot. But for now, I'm delighted to be joined by my usual co-host, Ed Walker, an expert on all things fourth tier. Tranmere Rovers fan Ben Jones, hoping for some good news to come out of Prenton Park. Fingers crossed in the next few days. And we're also joined by Jack Kershaw, who's a Fleetwood Town fan and another expert on all things EFL. Good evening, gents. Thanks so much for joining us. Bit of a big picture chat first, and coming to you, Ed. I'm just really enjoying the League Two promotion race as a spectacle from a neutral perspective. I imagine you are too.
Yeah, it's normally the division that offers the biggest chance of thumb promotion battles just because of the amount of spots that are available. And my pretty firm belief that League Two is the league, unlike League One, the Championship, where there isn't really such a thing as haves and have-nots. I think any side could get themselves into the promotion conversation, having been down the bottom end of the season before, just by getting your recruitment right. And I think we've seen that in some recent seasons, and potentially to a certain degree this year as well. So yes, you can say that Walsall are running away with the division and the best side in the league, but there's still 2 automatic spots and 4 blur spots, and there's currently 3 points between second and seventh, which is quite fun.
Do you get the feeling, Ben, if we talk about both the automatic promotion race and the playoff scramble, that some good teams are going to miss out?
Yeah, I think something I spoke about pre-season was I felt continuity was going to be really big this year, and I think we're seeing that to an extent at the top end of the division. And I kind of wonder whether some teams might overdo this January transfer window and have to kind of start again. And, the sides who kind of just a bit more sensible about their dealings may, bear fruit out of that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Jack, coming to you, who do you fancy for top 3? Because at the moment it's Salford and Crewe in there with Walsall. But if I put a tweet out last night, it's actually not a very common opinion that Salford and Crewe are going to finish in the top 3, which shows you how unpredictable it is sort of from now until the end of the season.
Yeah, because you've sort of got Crewe and Salford, 2 sides that maybe people didn't put in the top 3 at the start of the season. And then you've got, sort of the sides of Port Vale, Notts County, Doncaster sitting 4th, 6th and 7th that people did put in the top 3, or just around about, in that sort of top 4, top 5 place. So it's a bit weird. And, Crewe, there's some different play styles in there. Obviously, Notts County want to be... I think out of the top 7, they're the best football inside in terms of possession based and sort of keeping the ball. And then but then in that sort of top 7, you've got Port Vale and Doncaster who have got better depth. And Crewe we saw last season where Lee Bell at the end of the season things went apart, but this season they're in a bit of a, I'd say, better situation because obviously the second in the league, but because they recruited some more experienced players, which they maybe didn't have last season. They only had Mickey Demetriou. In the bad times, they can, pull them through. And Salford, I think they're just, enjoying themselves up there, keeping clean sheets. Just winning every week, obviously, except for Man City, but nothing to be ashamed at. A League Two side going City and getting battered 8-0. European side get battered by City 8-0. So it's going to be interesting. I don't quite think Crewe and Salford will be in the top three come the end of the season, but it's really unpredictable. I don't think you can give 100% opinion as to who will be. I think Salford is my top spot, which I think will be most people's, but the second and third, I can't really make my mind up, to be honest.
Yeah, Walsall, your top spot, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, it's going to be fascinating. And I suppose one team that are going to be aspiring to be in that conversation are Bradford City. Probably a sentence I maybe wasn't expecting to say a few weeks ago, but we're joined by Bantam, Chris Windsor at Dizzy Up the Guy. Good evening, Chris. Thanks so much for joining us.
Evening, chaps.
Is there some optimism about Bradford City after that performance against Grimsby and an indication of maybe a change of direction in terms of the recruitment strategy with some athletic players coming into the team?
Yeah, I think obviously if you were talking to us maybe a month ago, 6 weeks ago, I think the demeanour at the club was quite low. I think that a lot of fans were disappointed. We were promised that we were going to be, we were going to have a decent January. Luckily for us, I think that it's no coincidence that we've got Sarcevic back and we've got Patterson back. I thought that they absolutely ran the show against Grimsby. Sarcevic had, obviously, with the kind of player that he is, he was very, very, he was very dangerous, but he was also quite, he was really, really intelligent with his football and he was pressing them constantly. And Patterson keeps coming up with a couple of goals, obviously scored on the first game of the season against MK Dons. And also I feel like with Smallwood as well, he's probably enjoying that a little bit more. And also with Bobby Poynton, especially last night, I know it was men against boys, but Bobby really came into his own. I think that Bobby was probably, he was the best player on the pitch yesterday. So there's a lot more optimism. Players like Mickey Mellon coming in. Obviously, we've got Tommy Lee coming in. Obviously, that didn't go really well at MK Dons. But when you look back at last season or the last 2 seasons, really, at Accrington Stanley, and you look at what he's done, you've got Keller come in from Birmingham and Lapsley as well. And obviously, that's not quite worked out for him at Gillingham. So I feel that obviously with midfield ranks, where we're right up there regards to strength, and it's going to be interesting as we do seem to have changed our style of football.
Yeah, Mickey Mellon would be a very old signing.
Sorry, Michael Mellon.
He still is a Mickey.
Still getting used to it.
Still is.
He can still do a job if he
Have
leaves
it.
Oldham. Get your boots on, Mickey. What do you think about Bradford's prospects, Ed? Have you been won over a little bit by 1 or 2 recent performances?
I think I probably have more actually by what I've seen coming in January, really. We can't ignore it that the headline comes out about the news about Andy Cook, and you do kind of this thought because it feels like he's one of the most, I don't know what the term is, but kind of like if we're talking about footballers that feel like they kind of carry their football club, it's felt like that with him for the last couple of years, particularly, I feel. And to lose him felt like a loss. And then you see Michael Mellon come in, who I recall back to his time at Morecambe and how impactful he was there for a side struggling down the bottom. Recreating that would be so handy just to have as that focal point of the line. And I really am keen, particularly on the addition of Tommy Lee. I quite like the idea of Brandon Kaler, who I think just not really high up enough on the pecking order of the Blues. A midfield option who could substitute in at left back. Maybe there's a wing back spot for him that comes available if he wants to complete with Lewis Richards out there. Kind of a little bit keen on Lapsley to kind of reinvigorate what was about him before, because I think before we were looking at quite a tidy number 10 sort of advanced state midfielder sometimes. When we were previously at Mansfield thinking that with him. So keen to see how that goes there. I'm just starting to get a little bit of sense of how this looks going forwards. I'm still kind of wondering a little bit about defensive makeup because I'm still not quite sure what the top back three is at the minute. And I wonder if Graham Alexander necessarily feels the same about that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with that, Ed. I think that is an issue that we've probably had all season. I think when we signed, to be honest with you, when we signed Huntington, there was quite a lot of dismay towards that. When he's come in, he's played really well. He's actually been really good. You've got Kieran Keller's just come back from, he's been out for a fair few months. You've got Byrne and you've got Baldwin as well. Baldwin sometimes worries me, but I do believe that we are looking for another defender, to be honest with you. I think otherwise, bar obviously, as you mentioned about Andy Cook, which has obviously been a huge blow for the club, no matter what anybody thinks about Andy Cook. There are a lot of fans out there, to be honest with you, though, that do actually think that we play better without Andy Cook. And
that's what it is. Going and beating Grimsby without Cook is already a sign that things can be okay.
Yeah, and we've done that a couple of times this season already as well, or we've played certainly a lot better. So I think, to be honest with you, the ball is more on the floor. There's a little bit more play in the midfield. It's not just lumping it forward to Cook and hoping he gets onto the end of it. I think the other problem that we probably have got, in fact, we have got, is that unfortunately, Vidane Oliver, Tyler Smith, our backup forwards just don't seem to have it. It's just not worked for Vidane at all. It's been a bit of a horror move for himself. He's just never ever looked good, or he's been injured, or he was out at Stevenage last season. And we've got Kavanagh as well, Callum Kavanagh. At least I didn't call him Graham. We've got Callum Kavanagh there. He's starting to score a few goals. I am a little bit worried about where the goals are going to come from, but if we can get the best out of Michael Mellon, obviously, what was it, 13 in 22 goals for Morecambe last season. If we can play to his style, I think it's a really exciting move, especially with the fact that it sounds like he was pretty much in the door at Chesterfield, and we've come in at the last second to take him from Chesterfield, which I do also feel probably says a lot about maybe our recruitment, especially under David Sharp this year, where we have started to see improvements where we haven't had that for years. And it's important to have football men actually in charge of the recruitment side, which has been a huge problem. And it's no coincidence why Bradford have been where they have been for the last 5-6 years, because of that. So hopefully, that is changing. And I still think that we'll sign another 2, maybe 3 players. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forwards. But I certainly wouldn't rule us out at all.
My theory, Chris, is that I think if you're not going to be a very possession-based side, which Graham Alexander's teams don't tend to be, even if you are a bit more on the floor without Andy Cook, you've got to have players who are very energetic, ideally athletic, but also very aggressive against the ball. So you mentioned Patterson and Sarcevic coming back. I think Callum Kavanagh as well, or Michael Mellon. These are players.
I'm going to start calling them Graham and Mickey now because of you two. Thanks. You really put me off. I'm going to hesitate every time we're about to say.
But I think if the ball's going to change hands a lot, then you've got to have players who are good against the ball, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do feel like we have changed our style of play in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and it has shown an improvement. It has looked much better. I go back to the Chesterfield game. We looked very good. We looked again quite aggressive, where I don't think that we've had any of that aggression whatsoever all season. I think it's been quite appalling at times. I feel that we probably have changed the way that we're playing. So I think we're certainly, with now the amount of midfielders we have, and probably about 15 number 10s, it almost feels like that's going to be really, positive going forwards, especially with our bench as well when we're coming on for later games. You mentioned about Keller. If he's coming on towards the end of the game, with his power and with his confidence, especially that goal he scored earlier this season for Birmingham. If we can get the best out of him, I think it's going to be interesting. I don't want to be too optimistic because I'm a Bradford fan and I know what it's like, and I'm trying.
I think it really sums up now that I think you guys are probably one of the best Storm teams in the league, and you're still not in the top 7 yet. It feels quite bizarre. I feel like I'm seeing Bradford win more regularly than normal, and they're still currently not in those top 7 spots.
I think the problem is consistency. I think that we've probably have won a couple and then we've lost a couple, and it's just kind of carried on like that. What's worked in our favour is obviously what we're talking about today is the fact that this league, you're looking at Salford already. Where did Salford come from? There is that opportunity this season for one of those teams to do that. How close are we to the playoffs? How close are we to the automatics?
Yep.
I think, as we say, we can rule out Walsall already, but I do think that, there is potential in this Bradford team to
rule in Walsall.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we won't even mention them because, they're going to walk it, and we know that. But other than that, there's been nobody in this league that has been particularly in form, or certainly not for a long time. You have the teams that are up towards the top, and then they're just drifting down again. And it just seems to have that. I don't remember a League Two like this. There's always been maybe 2 teams at least that have absolutely flown, but there just seems to be there's no consistency. And I think that's the great thing about this league, is that anybody can, apart from Walsall, beat anybody.
Do you think, Chris, that you'll be able to turn your away form around? Because you're going to need to do that if you're going to push to the automatics, never mind kind of like the playoffs. Because I think you've got sort of top 3 home form, but then your away form's kind of bottom third, less than a point per game away from home. So do you think there's like an obvious reason for that? And is it maybe Alexander being a bit cautious away from home and trying to get the point?
I think you're probably a fair point, but sometimes I do look at, I look at his team going forward, before the game, and I'm thinking, okay, we're looking quite attacking here. You're absolutely right. The away form is abysmal. We do need to get on top of that straight away. I mean, some of the poorest games. I mean, I'm thinking back to the Harrogate game, probably 3 months ago. That was one of the poorest games I've seen for us. We've got to turn that around, and I'm just hoping that with more bodies in the building, certainly midfield, that maybe that we can stop that. I just wonder whether we might get another decent away performance, similar Ben will like against like Tranmere not too long back. If we can get that, I think that will build the confidence again. That's just something that we've got to work on. I think that we've always been like this. We've either been great at home or terrible away, or either one of those. And I think it's just important that now we do start picking those points up, even if it is a point away, and we're getting that home, those home points, which, to be honest with you, we do look very good at home. And certainly, like I say, against Grimsby, I would say that was probably my performance of the season.
Jack, you followed. You're obviously a kid when you saw Graham Alexander's side, but based on his time at Fleetwood, do you have that extra bit of faith in him because you've seen him do it with your own eyes, I guess?
Yeah, it weren't pretty at Fleetwood, but at times in League Two, you don't need it to be pretty to win promotion. Just stick to really what you do. You don't need to overcomplicate stuff. I don't think. Not be this massive possession-based side with a possession-based brand. Just stick to what you you're good at, and then you'll go up for me. And I think Alexander, for Sarcevic chipping in, I'm not surprised because I think Sarcevic scored 13 under Alexander when we went up. And I think for Alexander, it's just sometimes his lineups have been a bit questionable. I think, maybe starting a few players out of positions, maybe starting just one out and out defender at one point, and just starting one out and out centre midfielder at one point. And like me and you said last time that we were on, that if you have this much vibrant threat going forward, you are leaving Richie Smallwood just as sort of that player who stays back. And Richie Smallwood, 34, he's not getting any younger. Can he sort of be that lone player when players bomb up the pitch, and maybe that can cause Bradford some problems? But
that's a great point, Jack. But because I've definitely felt that when Smallwood's isolated or he's got loads of the pitch to try and cover. But what I really like, and maybe Chris can pick up on this, when Patterson and Sarcevic have come into the team, because they bring the legs, it actually frees Smallwood up to maybe make the odd challenge that he might not feel comfortable doing when he had, say, Jamie Walker ahead of him and Bobby Boynton. So I think that having Sarcevic and Patterson in kind of allows him to put in some of those challenges and maybe show that more destructive side to his game.
I completely agree with you there, and I think that's it's really key for us this season, is that we can keep Patterson fit. He's had a horrific 18 months with injuries. He was out pretty much all of last season. Sarcevic obviously was unlucky that he got an injury very, very early on. And I think you're absolutely spot on with that. And I think Smallwood likes that. He's able to be a bit more comfortable with the ball, and Poynton as well, obviously going forwards. I think, the trio, or well, all four of them, sorry, are really, really, gelling as well very, very quickly. They probably only played together maybe twice, 3 times so far this season. But already it's starting to get, there's a lot of communication there. Patterson, for me, is vital for this football team. I just
He'd be pushing championship by now, Chris, I think, without some of those long-term injuries.
I completely agree with you, and I think that obviously that is what stunted him. And hopefully, we can keep him fit. Luckily for us, because of January and the players that we've brought in, we do have that backup option now. But I do feel that Patterson is probably our most vital player. I'm sure many Bradford fans don't agree with me on that one, but I do think Patterson's our main player, and we have to keep him fit.
Well, do you know what, Chris? I'm getting slightly worried because I'm starting to get a bit excited about Bradford City, which is very unusual for me.
You do this every time.
I know, yeah. I've normally got a massive downer on Bradford City. So, look, it's great to see you having something to look forward to with some optimism for the second half of the season, Chris. And best of luck and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Top man, Chris. We will be joined by K-Ci Rennicks of Notts County in a moment or two, but for now we're joined by Steve Hayward, who's a journalist and fan of AFC Wimbledon. Good evening, Steve. Thanks so much for jumping in to join us.
Good evening, guys.
When I think of the Dons, I think of a really solid, consistent team that's really doesn't matter what personnel is at the back. You seem to be able to keep clean sheets and tick off points at a pretty consistent rate. You've kind of been up there in that top 7 for most of the season so far and in and around it, as opposed to other sides that have maybe sort of had a few more highs and lows. So do you feel like you're on an even keel heading into the second half of the season?
Well, first of all, I'd say definitely I haven't heard the words you started that piece off with, like solid, dependable, no matter who's at the back. That hasn't been the case for a long, long time, I'd say. But in terms of sort of an even keel and the feeling going in towards the second half of the season, definitely the most confident I've felt, and probably a lot of Wimbledon fans have felt for a long, long time, in terms of the squad depth we've got, the abilities of certain players, and also just the signings we're making are finally promising signings. They're not sort of, you know what, we'll deal with that player going back from loan or that player's contract expiring and we'll just get something in. No, we're actually getting statement signings, the likes of Sam Hutchinson, Romain Sawyers when he was in for a month, and now with Marcus Brown, all 3 quality players that have no real right of playing in, no real I'm trying to think of the word, but yeah, no real right of playing in League Two.
Sure.
And should be playing a lot higher. And even with Ronan Curtis last season. So it feels a promising time.
Yeah, absolutely. Ed, I wanted to come to you on those signings like Marcus Brown and Romain Sawyers, who on paper, in terms of individual ability, probably do belong well above League Two. And yet probably the reason why you're getting them in League Two is because they've maybe not had much match practice. And I guess that's possibly the one risk of those sorts of signings, but every signing's a risk, isn't it, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I got completely put off there, but I thought you were going to finish that statement a bit later than you were. You just kind of finished that just then. No, it's Marcus Brown for me. It feels like, well, we just tried it with Sawyers. Let's try it again with Marcus Brown because it's that similar kind of story as you say there. Sawyers carried very good pedigree from up on a higher level. Those little individual moments you really noticed, I think, with Wimbledon, particularly, I think his last game was an impact for one off the bench, if I recall right, just to get things going just before the contract came to an end. And he's deservedly, I think, gone up a league to Bristol Rovers now, where he'll probably hopefully play a part in their survival, securing attempts all the same. And Marcus Brown, I suppose, is one where it feels like there could be some individual moments there where you just look at and think you're just a cut above just that little impact you can provide. And maybe the reason we're signing him in Wimbledon is because that consistent threat hasn't always been there. I feel like Marcus Brown's highlights reel mostly from Oxford. Is that the one I'm recalling on the top of my head? I feel like it was one that Liam Manning particularly enjoyed having when he was there.
It's one that I've seen most often. But sort of just talking on that of maybe the individual moments, that's exactly how we felt. And I've mentioned his name just a second ago. But Ronan Curtis. That's exactly how we felt. We felt that his his moments were primarily in a Portsmouth shirt, but we didn't know whether they were going to be few and far between after such a lengthy layoff with the ACL injury. So it was really it was really nice to see him just blossom and do well and stay fit and stay in the team post January when we signed him. And all right, the results didn't back it up, but we were a quality side still. We still got consistently good results. And I think, well, the one against MK was probably the sweetest of them all.
Yeah. Are we missing Omar Bagil, Steve? Are we missing that focal point from the front line, or are we is it something that's holding them back, or is it something that's just going to give him an extra level when he does return, whenever that is?
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, we are going to miss that focal point 100%, and that's why I personally wanted Sawyers to stay on, because he could give that. He felt a more physical presence in that number 10 false 9 than I really how to describe it in Johnny Jackson's setup, but that was who was the perfect foil for Bagil if he was taken off or if he was unfit, whatever. And now we know he's not going to be back until probably February time. So I think we can cope without him. I think that's definitely going to happen. We have got the quality of Matty Stevens. I mean, need I say anything more about Matty Stevens? He's been a revelation this season. And Josh Kelly, all right, it's taken him a long time, but in the most recent game I went to, which was Gills before New Year, it feels like such a long time since I've been to a game.
It was a long time since they played.
Yeah. Well. But in that game, he was mustard. He was quality. Like, I'm talking a player that we really haven't seen in the 12 months. The 12 months now that he's been here. So we can definitely cope, 100%. But he is going to be he is going to be missed at the same time. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You just don't know how it's going to play out, and especially because we haven't played football. The
feeling I have is Bagil and Stevens is a really nice complementary front two.
It is.
I feel like it's a bit different when you've got Stevens and Kelly in there, because I kind of wonder if Stevens feels like he has to take that physical responsibility on a little bit more.
I think we switch up the style. I mean, we have switched up the style. We started the season very much with a 3-5-2, with the front two being the focal point and Bagil being the one that dropped in. But now with a 3-4-1-2, sort of with a target or someone that's basically going to carry the ball forward, sitting just behind Stevens and Kelly, who will just run off defenders off of a high line. You know, they can run in behind. They are very able to. I do agree with you that those two, that is the star pairing, but it shouldn't be disregarded that Kelly and Stevens do work perfectly fine, in my opinion.
One more from me. If we were compiling a League Two most underrated 11, does Alistair Smith get in there?
100%. 100%. Yeah. I cannot believe that Lincoln City are willing to, one, let him go at the end of his contract, but two, not look at this. So, I mean, it is lucky that we have that during the negotiations, they didn't manage to put in, I'm told by Craig Cope, well, I think we were all told by Craig Cope, that he wouldn't have a recall clause put in. So how that was left out, because he's brilliant. He is utterly brilliant. He does the dirty work, and even I forget to see it sometimes. So I do try and keep an eye on him as much as possible. But
it's that role in the team. It's that role in the team. You don't want to talk about him much because they just get on with it.
Yeah, but at the same time, he's so silky and just so brilliant that I could wax lyrical about him all day at the same time.
So Ben and Jack, throwing it to either of you, what are your sort of takes on Wimbledon from what you've seen of them?
I just think solid. You know, they've got a really good structure about him. Johnny Jackson's got him playing in a way that sometimes they can set off, and sort of the 3-5-2. A lot of the teams in League Two sort of go for that three at the back, and I think sometimes they can sort of go man to man with the opposition. They can just set off them, but they don't let the opposition sort of give them too much trouble. And I think, obviously, like we said about Bugle and Stevens, but with the output that Stevens has given this season, I didn't quite expect it. And If he just keeps getting them chances, you've got two wing backs who are more like wingers, to be honest, with their sort of output and level of crossing ability that they can have. Because when I watched Wimbledon in August, I thought, they're a physical side, well drilled, balls into the box, and sort of bullying us in a way. And I think, that's another sort of style in League Two that you need to have to succeed, just bullying teams. And I think that's sort of what Wimbledon can have. And still only 19 goals conceded. And obviously with the centre-back worries, it's so far been a good season for Wimbledon. It's just unfortunate, at the start of the season, they couldn't quite gain some consistency, with obviously the game postponements. But in some cases, it might have been better for them.
You talk about inconsistency there, Jack. We were heavily inconsistent away from home as well. It's not only the flooding of the pitch that really affected us. It was the fact that we couldn't put together any sort of away form, no matter what. And yet at home, we were a completely different side. And it was quite amazing to see as a fan. And many fans that I sit around, we're all just sort of like in amazement of going, how on earth can we be two completely different teams week on week?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Is there some optimism for you, Steve, that you're in a very solid position with Joe Lewis to come back, with Alistair Smith, I think, to come back,
James Ball,
Callum Maycock, Miles Hippolyte, basically all of our midfield.
Yeah, so that's going to make a difference, isn't it, having those players back?
Definitely, and not only that, but also, well, you can look at it two ways. I, pretty much as an eternal optimist, think that we can take the fact that we've got games in hand in mind and just look to steamroll. Really, I this being very confident and slightly cocky, I think, but with how we're playing with somewhat of an A/B team, you can't really call it the A team, can't call it the B team because it's still got some of the quality players. But how we're playing with that sort of side, imagining us with our best team, I'd like to think we are top three teams in the league. And I definitely would say throughout the entire season, we've been one. If you look at it just as that best possible 11, we've been 100% underrated and flown under the radar, which I like, to be fair, because it has felt, again, like a while since that's happened.
Yeah, I love it when a good plan comes together. Brilliant stuff. Well, Steve, thanks so much for joining us. Do you think you'll get top 7, top 3 this season, just before we finish?
Top 7, 100%. I don't see a world in which we don't, because, again, like I've said, the quality is there to do it. Top 3, if we do those games in hand and we win them well, if we get through them, then, yeah, I don't see us finishing any lower than 3rd.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Steve, and look forward to catching up later in the season.
Yep, perfect. Cheers, Gab. Cheers, guys.
Top man. Delighted to be joined now by K-Ci Rennicks. Hope we haven't kept you waiting too long, K-Ci. Thanks for giving us a break in your work to join us. Just wondering how you're feeling about Notts County's promotion chances, because you're very close to the automatic promotion spots as it is. You're in pretty good form as well, and you've got Jody Jones just coming back from injury.
Yeah, can you hear me okay, just to begin with?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you.
Good. I'm very confident. I always have been. I've been optimistic since the start of the season, and despite, obviously the Salford blip, and I call it a blip because it was very, uncharacteristic of Notts to go away and lose 3-0. Not even just the scoreline, but the performance was, I'd brand it as embarrassing. But ever since that, we've looked like a completely different team as well. Yes, of course, we lost to Walsall, but who hasn't lost to Walsall this season? So it's one of them, mate. I've always been. I've always been optimistic about promotion, and it hasn't changed. Obviously, despite what's happened in the last 24 hours, either it still hasn't changed. So yeah, I'm confident, mate.
Yeah, that's good to hear. You're obviously losing Dan Crowley to MK Dons. Do you see that as a loss in that you're losing one of the most technical, creative players in the division? Or do you feel like it's an opportunity to maybe give yourselves a different dynamic going forward and maybe get in somebody who's, maybe a bit more aggressive against the ball?
It's both. It is both, to be fair, because of course, like his technical ability is outstanding, but I mean, from the comments he made in his interview yesterday, I'm kind of glad to see the back of him. I know that sounds maybe a bit controversial because of, you know, obviously he's probably one of the league's, if not the league's most technical player. But the reason why I believe that it's probably a good thing that he is out the door is because, like I said, the comments that he made, you know, in that interview were just, you know, I wouldn't say appalling, but I'd definitely say disrespectful. Basically, I don't know if you've seen it, but just to name a few, he said that the game away at MK Dons on Boxing Day was an audition for the club to come and get him or something like that. And then he was saying that he's never really played for a team with ambition, and saying that if you get on a train early enough, you know, you can go on a journey with a football club. So that's why I think it's a good thing that we've got rid of him, because he clearly, evidently didn't want to be at Notts County, given them quotes to begin with. And when you say there's no ambition, I mean, our ambition all season's been automatic promotion. So has he been sat there, obviously not buying into it, not believing it? So no matter how good you are, I think if you don't want to be at a football club, you can just leave, and he's left. So I think I personally think it's a good thing. Yes, okay, he's a good footballer, brilliant footballer, to be fair. But like I say, if you don't want to be here, you don't want to be here, get out the door. But as for playing a different dynamic, obviously we've signed Charlie Whittaker from Everton. You know, that's pretty. Obviously, he's going to play in a very similar role. But obviously, we've signed Will Jarvis as well from Hull.
Yeah.
So and you know, we only play one up front predominantly because obviously McGoldrick tends to drop in behind of Alessandro Jetta. So obviously Will Jarvis, you know, as far as we've been made aware, one of his best positions is playing up front. So whether we change the dynamic or not, who knows, mate? But I think we've definitely got the options now. Definitely got more options. Obviously, again, we've lost Dan Crowley, which is a blow. But you know, we've also been given a very healthy fee. I'm not sure about the actual the fee itself, but I know it's going to be healthy. So whether we reinvest that and give ourselves more options, but I think we have enough anyway. I do think we have plenty. So who knows, mate? That's the thing. Like with Notts, you never know what's going to happen. You really just never know what's going to happen. That's why we're probably one of the most exciting teams in the division.
Is there another African striker in the Danish leagues you can go and poach? Just get a succession line going.
I wouldn't complain, but that's another good point, mate. Because going back to the Dan Crowley situation again, obviously he's a brilliant player, but I said it last night. We've had to replace more significant players in the past. You know, Crowley was the Rodriguez replacement. You know, we lost Macaulay Langstaff in the summer. Alessandro Jetta was that replacement. I think if there's any one club with obviously the football radar and the scouting network that Notts County have, I don't really fear anymore of losing our players, because that is our model. We bring these players. No, like Macaulay Langstaff, for example, he was fit. I think the buyout clause was £50,000 for him. We sold him for £700,000 more. Crowley was a free. We've sold him for a fee. Ruben, Ruben was a free and he left on a free, but at least then we were promoted with Ruben, so that was also pretty much the prize of having him as well. So I mean, if Gambia have got any more players, I wouldn't say no, especially considering the one we've got.
Ben, can I just ask you from a neutral perspective or outside perspective? I think you've been a little bit unsure about Notts County when I've spoken to you about their prospects previously. So I'm just wondering, what would you need to see from Notts County in the next few weeks to be a bit more convinced by their promotion credentials?
Yeah, I think for a lot of the first part of the season, I thought they'd kind of resolve the issues they were having last season with, you know, the frailties and defensive issues and kind of overplaying from the back. There was a couple games maybe a month or so ago where, you know, they were caught on transition quite badly. You're very similar to what sort of happened a lot at the back end of last season. Sorry, my dog just squeaking a toy in the background. Yeah, I think that kind of like not really understanding the game too well, that issue seems to have reappeared a bit to an extent. And there's kind of the other sides who have been up there this year, they don't really allow those scenarios to develop. So I'm thinking kind of Wimbledon and Walsall. You know, they're very good at getting the ball from back to front very quickly and kind of bypassing presses from a lot of sides. So they don't really concede any goals in transition that way, you know, soft goals where a centre-back passes it to essentially the opposition striker. So I think it's probably just a case of concentration. We're not so if they can kind of resolve those issues, they've got more than enough firepower going forward. I mean, I think they've had, you know, the most chances of any team in the league this season. So, and they're all, you know, high quality chances. So you've got to back that front line to keep scoring. It's just whether they can avoid those defensive frailties of kind of overplaying, creeping back in.
Interesting. I mean, K-Ci, I think apparently that you've conceded, I think, the third most shots on target, which as a stat is sort of the one thing that maybe from the outside, is a slight worry defensively. But I imagine a lot of those from outside the box, because if I look at the impact of key figures, like the midfield seems a lot stronger in terms of depth than last year. You're not bringing in a veteran like Jim O'Brien because you've got more options this year. In central defence, you've got Matty Platt and Jacob Ado, who have made a huge impact. In goal, you've got Alex Bass, who seems to be a lot more reliable in terms of saving those shots than maybe Aidan Stone was last year.
100%. And to be fair, I weren't aware of that, the stat of the third most shots on target. But I think the stat that you have to really, truly focus on in terms of improvement defensively is the number of clean sheets. I mean, we've already surpassed the total kept last season. And I don't think
you did that in August, didn't you?
To be honest, mate, it wouldn't have been difficult. So, no, but like I said, we've surpassed the number of clean sheets now. We recruited well in the summer. We knew that. Everyone knew that. I think we had a lot of eyes on us in the summer because obviously Alex Bass again. Not even just to get him. It weren't even a loan. Obviously, it was a permanent as well. So we were definitely going for it, and I think that brought a lot of attention to us straight away. But I think the fact that we've kept more clean sheets this season than we have this last season already, I don't think it's surprising. But again, it deserves huge credit to the coaching team because it's not easy to coach that, especially straight away. Again, yes, we probably have recruited better players than we did the last season, and obviously the likes of what they have in front of them, such as George Abbott, who I don't know why or how he's playing in League Two, but he is, and I'm not complaining. But yeah, obviously the third most shots on target stat is maybe looks concerning, but like I said, mate, we've already kept more clean sheets than we did last season, and within the top 6, top 7. So it's happy days as far as I'm concerned.
It's a shame, really. I kind of missed 5 Notts County. That was quite fun. That little era there. K-Ci, do you reckon when Joe Jones is back up to full fitness, is there any chance we might see a bit of a different role to what we've had previously? Because I think we've got different wing-back options compared to what we had previously. I think Sam Austin's played out there a few times, for instance. Is there a chance he might take one of the 10 spots, or do you think that spot back out wide and the deliveries is there for him again?
Well, it's interesting. It's even more interesting now again with obviously Dan Crowley leaving. Jody can play in the 10, and it wouldn't be a bad idea to play in there, especially in the quality he's got. But I think in the cameos that he's made since he's come back from injury, he has played out wide. So I would imagine that is probably where he's gonna remain. However, I just with Jody, obviously again he's been out for a couple of months now, and you can never really expect these players to come back and really hit the ground running straight away. I know his ability is exceptional, but even if you can get 75% of what you got from Jody Jones last season on the left, you're still guaranteed probably about 10 assists from now to the end of the season, a couple of goals as well. So to be fair, I think with the way we're looking at recruiting as well, again with Charlie Whittaker, I don't think that 10 option is where Jody's going to fill in. So I will probably say it's probably on the left or the right, because obviously Stuart Mayo likes to play inverted. I know some of our supporters don't particularly enjoy that, but
what's your stance on that, K-Ci? Are you pro inverted wing backs or anti?
Yes, when it's Jody Jones, not when it's Kellen Gordon. That's what I think.
I am pro whatever works, Gav. I really have.
What a cop out!
No, I have to.
Are you also involved in politics, K-Ci, by any chance?
No, I'm pro whatever works, mate. If we're winning 3-0 or 4-0 away from home with inverted win backs, then I'm swearing by it. If we're getting beat 3 or 4-0 away from home with inverted win backs, then I'm telling them to change it. You know what I mean? But if it works, mate. You know what I mean? But sometimes it can be frustrating because again, you want to whip. You want to see the players whip the ball in. They have to cut back to do it, and it's just like, just go on, get it in the box. So I get that frustration, but like I said, if you're winning 3 or 4-0 with it, just keep it. Do whatever you have to do at all costs.
Absolutely. Do you think Notts County are going to finish in the top 3, which I do? Do you think top 7? How are you feeling about your prospects?
It's so hard, mate. It is really hard to say because obviously we look like we are destined to do it this season, but we all saw how it went last season. Obviously, again, we're a much better outfit now. But history has always been had a tendency to repeat itself in football. However, I am confident that we will finish in the top three, only because I've been to every game this season, and even in the games that we've lost, the Salford game, okay, they were exceptional on the day, but I've not looked at a team and been massively convinced. And that's mental, because we've played Walsall twice and lost twice. But Walsall in that second half of the second game were absolutely brilliant. But the first, three halves of football we played against them, they were very close. And they obviously, I think they'll win the league anyway. So we can forget about Walsall, move them to the side. As far as I'm concerned, there's 2 automatic promotion places remaining, and I think we'll take one of them, because I don't think there's 2 better teams than Notts when you take Walsall out of the equation.
Interesting. Well, we'll see. Well, you're certainly in with a squeak, that's for sure.
Exactly.
K-Ci, thanks so much for joining us, and look forward to catching up later in the season.
Pleasure, man. Take care. Cheers, guys.
Top man, K-Ci. Delighted to be joined now by Danny from the One at Top Front podcast on Salford City, and also the Old Dead Tree fanzine. Danny, thanks so much for taking the time out of your evening to join us.
My pleasure.
Just wondering, Salford City, it's really the complete opposite to Wimbledon, where they've been on a sort of steady form, steady position.
I wouldn't call it steady. It's been rapid. It's the league's best form.
Okay, yeah, but I think Wimbledon have been sort of around the top 7 for much of the season, whereas in Salford's case, the last couple of months, it's like they were sort of lower mid-table at the start of the season, and the last couple of months they've just been accelerated into this astonishing rapid form, as Ed called it.
Yeah.
I'm sort of curious, do you see this in astonishing form continuing? How are you feeling about your promotion prospects?
You know me, Gab. Do I see anything good continuing? No. So, that's it. But the thing is, especially when you lose Stefan Negru, that doesn't help anybody. I think I started a very, very popular rumour based on good information that he's going to Bradford and a permanent deal. Crazy, I know, but then I'm hearing it's a League One loan. So yeah, that's Negru. If Matty Young stays, then we might have about another double-digit set of clean sheets before the end. I firmly believe we might. Sam are actually in front of that back three, whoever actually is in it. Even if we sign nobody, I think we're going to do pretty well. But it's still, I'm still processing last Saturday 8-0 in terms of we are not. If I only watch our team, I can believe we're a good team. Then I watch us against a team who have got Doku.
You're not playing Manchester City again this season, though. Just to get it. Don't worry about it.
Well,
don't worry about it. There's Premier League teams that don't care about Manchester City games. Just don't worry about it.
They're playing Fleetwood on Saturday, so
yeah, it's a wafer between them, isn't there? Really, but yeah, it's odd. That's affected me in the fact that Matty Young can actually let in a goal, never mind a few. I wouldn't really say any of them were massively his fault. So that's kind of broken his invincibility cloak, which I kind of sensed for a while. I do think the Negru thing's a massive deal because you're just left with Curtis Tilt, really, as a specialist centre-back, because you probably know that our wide centre-backs are actually full-backs. They're not centre-backs. It's Shepherd and Garbutt ordinarily, unless Tom Edwards gets brought out of his cage every now and again. So I can't see it. Honestly, I just can't. It feels. I was looking at a stat. I discussed this with Jack actually on a recent podcast. Our expected points were 13th in the league, and we're actually third. But PPDA, if we're going to get technical, me and Jack love a bit of PPDA. We are the best pressers according to that stat, and we have been for quite a while now under Cal. And we have the most, or we did it very recently, the most high recovery. So we've got a game plan. We know what we're doing in that respect. But I don't think Tyrese Forner, yes, I have to talk about him, can suppress his dribbling cage footballer instincts forever. And he is doing it at the moment.
I love him. I love the guy. The guy looks like he wants to take on 3 players every time he gets to the ball. I love it.
You and Tom Williams will have a great party together. But when you actually watch him, he's fighting his tendency to, as you said, take on like the whole school ground. And when you think that if we had a team that needed that, that's fine. We don't need that. We need a simple passer in there with a bit of creative vision. His best attribute at the moment is actually his ability to find runners in behind. Not necessarily Cole Stockton because his legs have gone. But
it's more delicate, isn't it? That kind of loose roll he gets on the left hand side a lot.
Yeah, I just a quick word on Adelican. I didn't realise because I didn't look anything further back than his Doncaster days, but he had quite a few fallow years apparently. So I'm thinking that he's a guarantee to kind of electrify us, and he does look very good. He even looked quite good against City, but apparently from about 2018, 2019, etc., he wasn't doing very much.
He was a massive deal at Scunthorpe, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and then he kind of dropped off from him.
That's the thing. So he was really exciting player at Scunthorpe, where he was this absolute live wire. But the problem I think he had was he maybe made the jump to the Championship too soon, and he didn't end up playing at all for Bristol City.
Didn't realise that.
And then he seemed to have a dry few years after that, and then now he seems to be kind of picking it back up again. And it wouldn't surprise me if he has another incline.
Yeah, I'll just say one last thing on
Sure.
Akib. He moves like a player from another league, and he's not moving like Doku. To talk about City again, he's not quite that good, but he moves. He's got a smoothness and a slipperiness that I just don't see in our league. You don't see that from players in League Two very often. So I think we've got our defensive shape sorted. I think our 3-1-4-2 is pretty solid in the sense that we don't require our wing backs to actually track back. Really, it really is Osama Ashley in a back three, and they spread wide. Osama slots in exactly where he needs to. Massively underrated Osama Ashley. I'm sure you all like him to a degree, but I'm sure he's even better than you can imagine when you see him game by game. But can we sustain even a playoff thing? I'm not going to commit. I'm not confident enough. No, I'm really not.
I definitely take your argument with this because it does feel like part of the reason for this storm is Robinson just finally finds something that clicks. I've seen you guys a couple of times live over this Christmas period. I was up at the Accrington game and I did the MK Dons game quite recently. Games you both won. Well, you've been winning every game at the minute. It's all the case. I think I quite like Luke Garbutt in that left centre back role. I think his last ditch defending can be really handy, particularly I think of him more as a centre back in the middle on that side than I probably do Shepherd on the other side. Maybe just because I'm a bit more seeing Garbutt there, but it works Shepherd all the same. I quite like how you're working with Haji Manoga because I think Manoga's one for a while that we've looked at. I think at Portsmouth particularly, they've never really been able to find something that really suits him. But I think in that right wing back role where he's got that little turn of pace and a largely front focused approach, that works really nicely. I completely agree with Don Ashley, and it's important in the middle, especially because Thorne tends to be out wide half the time. And then just that little bit of goal scoring Thorne that came from Stockton. The Accrington ones, particularly what comes to mind to me, you kind of saw out the first half, an Accrington side that was quite direct, quite kick and rush, and then you just picked them off at the start of the second half and completely went out of sight and sealed that off at the end. So maybe we don't see this electric top level Thorne going forwards, but I do still believe in the idea that you've got something that clicks and that can keep you in the top half, certainly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, on what you're talking about there, Manoga, the only thing I don't like about him is his diver. He's a proper diver, and I'm not a fan of that because he's strong enough, as you said, he's quick enough, and he's good on the ball. If he stays upright, as he's strong enough to do, penetrate, man. Don't dive. But if that's Carl telling him to dive, then that's me telling the wrong person off because Carl, as we know, tells people to do things that are on the edge. But yeah, we're doing well. I think it's a very, very small squad. Last thing I'll mention is this: look at all the games that we won in our rise to rising form before MK Dons. A load of them were a load of, in my opinion, drivel. A lot of them, a load of rubbish. Harrogate, Accrington, absolute terrible teams, or on the day they were. The only performance I thought was really good against a very good team was, as you said, you watched, Edward, MK Dons. That I was proud of us on.
It's worth saying in that I think MK put a lot of shots straight at Young. There were a lot of attempts, and then Gilby in particular could not get the corners at all. So I think there was an element of luck with that, but you ground out all the same, just grabbing that goal in the first half.
Yeah, but sorry, Gab.
No, well, one thing I'm curious about is whether we should give, and I think we've had a bit of an exchange about this on Twitter, but I'd love to explore the conversation more on here. Do we give Carl Robinson some credit for getting the best out of Cole Stockton? Because I've always felt like Carl Robinson previously in his career, I felt like he's a little bit self-above tripe in the sense that he's got a little bit of an ego. And I kind of wonder whether he's got a bit more maturity now, and it allows him to get the best out of a striker who was probably a little bit.
What I would say, my opinion of Stockton is that he's one of those you just let him do his thing.
Okay.
Particularly when you think about Morecambe, it's just Morecambe let him grab games by the scruff of the neck a lot of time, and it was almost kind of not necessarily using so much.
Do a lot of pressing. You don't top the PPDA charts if you're not. The centre forward isn't on it against the ball, which I didn't think Stockton would.
Is that so much also about the height of the wing backs, perhaps? The fact that Burko and Minoga are contributing so much more around the halfway line, perhaps.
Interesting, yeah.
Because I don't know if a lot of their possession is necessarily one up in that front line. It feels like it's kind of more shuttled out to the sides, and then you've got Shepherd and Minoga to deal with on one side, and Garbett and Burko to deal on the other, and that's where the possession's actually won, or it's broken up with Thorne as they've got back in.
That makes sense.
Instead, I feel like Stockton maybe kind of, what's the word, kind of influences the direction to go. He kind of closes off one side down the right, so the players naturally play the ball down the left. I feel like that's more of his contribution to the press.
Can I come in on that? Because I think I've got something that it doesn't change what you're saying, but we play man to man, right? If you watch the City game, I've mentioned it for the third time, we played man to man against Man City. But that's how we play. So as I probably said on previous podcasts, that if you change your system and your whole way of being and philosophy for a game against City, then you're sunk because no one will know what they're doing. So ultimately we play man to man. But the only time we don't is that Cole Stockton has got half and half's the centre half and the goalkeeper. He doesn't have to win the ball off. He doesn't have to really press either. He has to angle his body a bit that way and angle his body a bit that way. And that's it. So, but he's more mobile than Matt Smith. So we were used to Matt Smith being kind of our burden up front who stopped us pressing. But we've got so much pace around the team. Minoga, Ashley, Tyrese Forner was doing the thing you hate. And I'm not criticising him. It was a positional thing. You know how you didn't like it against Chesterfield when he was actually joining the front line gap?
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. He was doing that again against City. Because I'll just say this right. And I could be... What formation do we all think that Cal Robinson is normally attached to?
Well, historically 4-2-3-1, more recently at Oxford 4-3-3.
4-3-3. Can I take your second answer? 4-3-3. Right.
Okay, yeah, sure.
I honestly think it's not a 3-1-4-2. It's a hidden 4-3-3. It really is.
It's very asymmetric, that shape, especially because when MK Dons game comes to mind. Like Adelican, I think officially on team sheet is a second striker. He's basically a winger in that. He's just got that entire left-hand channel for himself. You see it. It almost feels like Minoga's sometimes encouraged to be, as you say, a right winger. And it's kind of like you'll have Burko shuffle into a left back, Garbett left centre back. I think it was Negru who played in that game, or Tilt who went one across, and Shepherd was a right back. So you're right, there was that 4-3-3 shape in there.
Loving it. Look, yes, credit at last, finally. So yeah, but I honestly think that there's normally Osama Ashley is basically in our back something all the time. He's not in anywhere else apart from maybe a bit of man-to-man pressing going forward. So he really, plus that back three, makes it a back four in a very unorthodox, non-wing backy way. Very unusual. And I just think that in a sense, that's why
he's a pain in the backside.
He's. I mean, and when you get Kelly and my back, I'd love to see his high recovery stats because he's the one you have to worry about to win the ball back. Never Burko. I understand Burko's our current placeholder. He's not been fancied under about 4 different managers. He's been at Salford for about 5 or 6 years. He's never been played consistently by any of them. So I'm talking very fast and I don't know why. But I'm trying to replicate Kelly and Mai. Kelly and Mai is going to come back. And you think, why would Kelly and Mai play as a left wing back? Because it's not a left wing back place. Because Haki Badalakin can play in that spot. Anybody can play in that spot. Louis Barry could have played in that spot when he was here. Because there's very little defensive responsibility. Because exactly what Ed said. The right wing back, who's a natural defender, has got more of a responsibility to come back to make it a back four if Ashley disappears, or if one of the centre backs goes forward and does a bit of the old Sheffield United overlapping stuff. So,
right,
is that enough for you?
One final one for me, Danny.
Yeah.
Who's that third midfield man with Thorner and Ashley? Because I don't know if he's settled on like Lund or Watson yet, or whether he even thinks Woodburn could maybe find somewhere in there to work.
What a question. That's what we need.
Yeah.
That's what we need. Lund is great once every 2 weeks. Watson seems to be unfancied and a bench option. The rest of them, Jez Davis and Liam Humbles are out on loan, I believe, at various places down the football pyramid. So, and there's a 15-year-old player who we brought on against City called Marshall Hayes, who's our, big rising star through the ranks. So that's one to keep an eye on. But you're right. In a 4-3-3, even though it's a 3-1-4-2, we don't have an absolute banker as our third midfielder. It's Forner and Ashley and another. And I don't know who that is. I think that's who we're going to be looking for. And if we don't go out and buy another at least one or two centre-backs, then there's something very, very, very wrong, because Negru's a massive miss, but City did it to us for the fifth time I mentioned them. They targeted it our lack of height at wide centre-back. All you need to do is play high channel balls. And you win the second ball and you can play from there. Shep and Garbutt are fine there, but Garbutt's be a very, very good left wing back, very good delivery, very good front-footed presser. I'd have him there if you were in against a team that you want to be more defensive orientated, and I'd have Mai there when he's eventually off his crutches against a team you're going to dominate. So, yeah, if we had a lot more time, I'd give you more, but I don't want to hog the thing.
No, that's really interesting. Joe, I find it really weird that Kellyan Mai was arguably your best player when the form was mid-table or lower mid-table, and yet when the form
he just hadn't found something that worked to that point. It was kind of too dependent on Kellyan Mai being a winger, and I think now he's found somewhere he can slot him back in. That's the hope, anyway.
On that point, Gab, I think what you're saying is that sometimes when your best player is performing streets above the rest of your team, your system doesn't work. And then when the majority of your team are playing well and you don't have any standouts, your system is working, and our system is working. I think that's what you were saying, in that sense.
Yeah. Yep. Well, no, that's really interesting. Well, certainly can't wait to see what happens when Kellyan Mai does come in, and because that could be really exciting. Danny, thanks so much for your insight on Salford City. Brilliant stuff. Really enjoyed chatting. So hopefully catch up with you soon.
See you soon, guys.
Top stuff. And of course, get subscribed to the One at Print podcast, and of course the Old Dead Tree fanzine. Well, if you guys have got a bit more time, I wanted to have a look at some of the other contenders for automatic promotion. We've actually had a video from Crewe Alexandra fan Tom Boon talking about the Alex's promotion prospects.
Dodgy 1-0 wins at home to Morecambe. Crewe's season in League Two this season, like a lot of League Two sides, has been inconsistent. I think that is the way to sum it up, isn't it? A slow start to the season with a heavy 5-0 defeat at home to Chesterfield and a defeat away to Barrow, and a 0-0 draw against Swindon had us thinking it was going to be a long old season and that we could possibly end up in a relegation battle. But Lee Bell's side has done what Lee Bell's side do best. We have thrived in adversity and we have pushed on this season with the losses of Elliot Nevitt, Luke Offord, Rio Adebisi, amongst others. Crewe have replaced them and they've developed their own talent to be a suitable League Two contender once again. It looks like we will be in an automatic promotion race, despite what quite a lot of pundits seem to be saying about us. We're still going under the radar. Lee Bell's side could be top of the league, 12 points clear in Walsall's position, and I still think we would be underrated somehow. But we've had immense talent. I mean, I think Omar Bogle and Kane Hemmings, I know it's someone that Gab doubted himself, those two strikers. I think they've more than suitably replaced Elliot Nevitt. I think the work rate and the way that we've actually adapted to using a front two this season has allowed for those two to thrive. Jack Lancaster is the star of the show, but players improving, like Matas Holacek, like Zach Williams, like Ryan Cooney, who's not one of our own, but is still someone who's improved and made a difference. We've got a squad with a lot of depth. We've got a squad with a lot of talent. And we still have that comeback ability. We still have that ability to grind out results. They are the two main things about us. I mean, the Carlisle game on New Year's Day was an example of that. But also, a dodgy 1-0 win. Dodgy 1-0 wins at home to Morecambe, away to Accrington. They sum us up as well. We've had glimpses of real quality against Harrogate, Tranmere, Bromley. And yeah, it feels like this January transfer window has been about retention rather than addition. We are just looking to build on what we have with what we've already got here, and we are looking to end this season, hopefully, in the top three. It does really feel like Lee Bell has it in him, and the squad has it in them to get it done this season.
He's got a great voice for ASMR, him.
Absolutely. Ben, I wanted to come to you on Crewe's promotion prospects, because it seems like the fan base seems to be quite bullish about their chances, and with good reason, as they're sitting pretty in second.
Yeah, I think you can't blame them, really. I mean, you've kind of carried on where they were last year, haven't they? As kind of Crewe fan there said, they had that slow start to the season, and I know pre-season I had been doubting them, and I kind of thought that was maybe confirmation of them not doing well, but that's not been the case. Part of the reason you could say they're up there is the lack of any sides really challenging Walsall. So it's still kind of my opinion that Crewe will slip away a little bit there. I think there's a few
Out
other
of the top
sides,
7 or into the playoffs?
certainly out of the top 3, and I think much like last season, they will be battling hard to stay in that top 7 come the last few games. I think they narrowly clung on last year to the playoff position, but they nearly fell out of them. They had to really, grind those last few results out to get over the line into the playoffs. And I think it'll be a similar story this year, especially with a couple of the sides that are currently outside the playoffs that I would kind of fancy to end up inside the top 7, which like your MK Dons and so on. So I think they've got a bit of work to do, but what they've really got going for them there, sort of similar in a way to Walsall, is they've got a coach with a real plan who knows what they want to do, got a real way of playing, and they've got the proper ethos with the recruitment and also the academy bringing players through, and it's all kind of connected where other clubs, MK Dons again, and other clubs not doing so well, like Gillingham, are kind of just recruiting individual players rather than so much trying to build a team as a whole. And that might be what kind of gives Crewe a good enough chance to get a playoff spot. But I'd just be really surprised if they were anywhere near that top 3 picture comes the last sort of 5 games of the season.
Do you agree with that, Jack? Or do you have a bit more faith in Crewe to possibly push that top 3?
I have more faith in comparison to last season, because I said at the start that they've got more experienced players in there, more players that can sort of get the younger ones just pulling through the bad times. And even Omar Bogle, he needs a lot of man management, but it was out injured, and then it was Lancaster and Tracy up top, and he waited his turn. He was on the bench, and then 3 out of 5 of his goals have come in the past 3 matches. So it shows that when Bogle wants to get up for it, and hopefully in the next 4 months, come the end of the season, he is up for it. He can be that leader in the Crewe team, that he can sort of push him through. But Crewe, again, another side in this league that are hard to beat and that are up there, and that Lee Bell. Lee Bell is a demanding coach of working hard, and I think that will take him a long way. And even when they have struggled with not having an out-and-out striker, Tracy's and also Lancaster, both of them have stepped up to the plate massively. And then you've got Dimitri with 2 young centre backs either side him, real energetic, and I think 2 sort of different profiles in wing backs either side. Cooney will get the output and he's more powerful. Then you got Conway, who's really, really good with his footwork and sort of more technical quality. And it seems like Bolton won't recall him, and I hope they don't, because I think Max Conway's a really, really solid left wing back. But it's just the case with any side in the top 7. You don't know if they're coming or going, really. They can have 2 losses in a row, then they can go 3 wins in a row, and they can still be in the top 3. But they'll definitely be in the top 7. Just a question of who gets that 2nd and 3rd place.
Yeah, that's
at the end of the season.
It's a great point, because if we say, I don't know what the sort of projected points total will be for for finishing the top 7, but I think it's going to be, we're looking at about, I don't know, let's say 73 points gets you into the top 7. That would mean that Crewe would need only another 30 points from their remaining 21 games. So slightly less than 1.5 points per game. So, and then this is a side that are currently second. So, and they've only lost 4 games all season. So I don't know whether I'm not sure I'd be comfortable. It's one thing sort of maybe thinking like, you know, Port Vale with the quality of squad that they've got, or Doncaster having Grant McCann, or Notts County having Jody Jones, or AFC Wimbledon with the consistency and defensive solidity that they've shown this season, and these games in hand as well. But yeah, it feels like Crewe would have to drop a lot of points to finish outside the top 7, with even with some of the quality of some of the sides on the outside.
Yeah, definitely, and I think you know, Crewe. I think it's just been a massive thing with them. You know, the first 3 matches they were horrific. That Chesterfield result. I think
I thought they were
someone
going to be
even
in the
rip up.
bottom 6, bottom 8 after the first 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, even after the Chesterfield battering, I saw someone ripping up his season ticket, and that's only 2 games in. But it shows, you know, how awful they were. And since then, they had that run where people thought, you know, Crewe got up to 5th, but if you look at the teams that they played, it was like Harrogate, Accrington, Morecambe, you know, sides that if you want to be up there, you need to beat. But then Crewe then went to Port Vale and got a point on the Monday Night Football, and I think it was Lancaster who came off the bench and really took it to Port Vale in that second half. And then it just when they were playing the sides that, you know, are better than the Morecambe, Accrington, Harrogates, that, you know, Crewe started to make people open their eyes more about them and show them that, you know, we're not just beating the sides at the bottom, we can go and perform and, you know, really give it to the sides that are sort of not at the top, but, you know, at a better level than them. And yeah, I fully believe that Crewe will stay in the top 7, and it's just whether, you know, they have the sort of depth and quality to compete with the sides, you know, like you said, Doncaster, Port Vales, and Notts County's in that top 3.
Ed, do you think that there's going to be a shock team dropping out of the top 7? Because, I mean, I want to bring up a team like Port Vale, for instance, who did win last time out. That was our first success in 6. They've never quite convinced me as a collective this season, despite the strength of their bench maybe being one of the reasons why they've still been able to accumulate a high points tally so far. But is there a danger that maybe Port Vale could drop out of the top 7?
Yeah, Port Vale's a funny one. Yeah, I can't remember how long ago we're going back now. It might be a month, maybe more than that. But they were the ones leading the pack, and Walsall kind of got past them and then just went clear of them. And we really saw Port Vale drop away into quite alarming form. I still think the most recent victory. It's difficult to do this, Gab, because like no one in League Two's basically played for about 3 weeks because of all these postponements and the FA Cup games. I think we had 2 games last week and nothing really changed with anything in the table because of that. So we're kind of as we were really for the last 3 weeks now. I'd still kind of wonder if Port Vale are missing certain assets in terms of availability at the minute. I think when you're without Stockley, you kind of feel different with that front line. George Byers is starting to reach stage. I'm wondering if it's going to happen for him. That's
could he be a
because of
game
his
changer?
You'd like to think so, but he's had such a problem with fitness across this entire season, which is, to be fair, that's let Ryan Crosdale show what he's about, which is handy because he's a very handy asset for them to have. And we're slowly getting Garrity back up to speed. I think the wing backs are fine without being spectacular. I'm kind of a bit hopeful about Jaheim Headley coming in from Huddersfield, who last time I saw him in League 2 at Harrogate, loved him. Just want to see that
think
again.
I like the Headley signing because I think he's somebody who's very quick and strong in those 1v1 situations. And I think that I think Darren Moore is very good at setting a team up for individual games, as tailoring a game plan like he did at Doncaster really well. And I don't think he's a coach that coaches really clear patterns of play that allows you to create a high volume of chances sort of organically without relying on individual quality. So I think that's where you're probably going to need somebody like a Jaheim Headley, wing backs who are very strong out wide and can go for and beat people individualistically and make something happen.
I'm also quite a little bit keen on what the goalkeeper situation seems to be emerging with them, because it's still like Ripley was the one. Last couple of games we've seen Ben Amos, and they've just brought in Nathan Broom from Swansea. So where's this going to look when January's all done? I'm really intrigued with this now. just to see where that goes with them. Nathan Broom is not a sweeper. We're not making that joke. We're not doing that.
I feel like I've got to crowbar it in.
You're not managing. I'm not letting it. Not
happening. Yeah, I mean, Ben, we've not even mentioned Doncaster yet, and they're a team that I feel quite bullish about, despite even though performance-wise they've not really hit the heights yet. Partly because I've got a lot of faith in Grant McCann and his pedigree at this level, and partly because they've just loaned in Charlie Crewe from Leeds, who I know from a bit of the research that I've done, he's a very highly rated midfielder. He's already featured for Leeds in a league match. He's already got a Wales cap. Really prodigiously talented midfielder, and I've got a feeling that he could be a game changer for Doncaster. And they did well in the loan market last January as well. I think they could do similar here. Yeah,
for sure. I think they've been a side that I've fancied for most of the season and even pre-season to do pretty well. The thing they seem to really be lacking is consistency, and they've got a really nice, well-balanced side. They're good in possession, but they can also mix it up a bit. And I'm guessing they're kind of probably scratching their heads as much as the limited amount I've seen them about why they can't find that consistency. So it's just about whether they can rediscover the mentality that saw them have that crazy winning run at the end of last season. I think as someone said earlier, history does tend to repeat itself. So I wouldn't be too surprised if they draw on that experience they had last year, although they won't have kind of the purple patch of someone like Adelakun to find all the goals in that he did in that run. The team as a whole, I think will be there or thereabouts, and at the minute I still kind of think they will occupy one of those top three spots. Just because I think in terms of the actual balance of the side, they're probably next best after Walsall at the minute. And I'm kind of expecting them to make a bit of a late surge there. But I'm still keen on MK Dons as well. I know that.
Yeah, me too.
I know the team they're building. Absolutely stupid.
You've got to be. I mean, I know they're kind of 8 or 9 points back from sort of Salford and Crewe at the minute. But with
games in hand, Ben, that's the thing. Like if they
they've only played 23, I think it is 22, 23.
So if they won both their games in hand, I think they'd have 2 points fewer, or 3 points fewer than Crewe, who are second. So it shows how tight the table is.
But as Salford demonstrated, Gab, they can have days where they just can't put shots in corners, and they'll have chances, but they'll waste them and just be wasting them from a goal, and they'll get picked off in a situation like Salford. It can happen to them.
With MK Dons, for me, it's more about comparing them to where the likes of Notts and Doncaster are rather than Salford and Crewe, because I do think Salford and Crewe will fade at least to some extent. So with there being not much between MK and those sides occupying the playoff spots, I think they've got a pretty solid chance of making their way through to a top three spot. And then the other kind of side for me at the minute would be Notts. So I'm seeing kind of 2 out of Doncaster, Notts, and MK Dons being the top 3.
Interesting.
And then the other one.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think for me it would be Doncaster and Notts with MK in the playoffs. But Jack, I'm wondering, do you agree with me and Ben, I suppose, that Notts County and Doncaster are bigger threats to MK Dons' automatic promotion prospects than Crewe and Salford? Or do you think we have to go by what the table says and say Salford and Crewe are the ones to beat?
No, because I think in the long run, you need the firepower on the bench, and as we spoke about the pressing stat with Salford, the top of that pressing stat shows that they're an intense side. Can they keep that intensity up for a 46 game season? Who knows? Could they sort of keep them fitness standards up? We saw with Pete Wild's Barrow, really, that sort of shot him in the foot that they didn't get in the playoffs last season, because sort of the energy levels dropped because of how much Wild demanded of his sides, being like that. But yeah, definitely, Notts have the quality. They're getting Jones back. Obviously, Crowley's gone, but if you want to be a side that goes up, you don't want a player there who thinks he's too big for the club. And as good as a player Crowley is, You don't want that character there. That's why probably Crewe have done so well. They've brought the fans together. They've got a squad that you wouldn't think many have egos. Maybe Omar Bogle, but if he's getting his head down and he's contributing, then it shows that he's developing sort of as a person. And I think MK do have a shot. Crowley and Williams, I think, are two really good additions, because I've been saying all season that MK needed that destroyer in midfield.
Yeah.
And then you've got a box midfield there of Williams, Kelly, Crowley, and Gilby. That's nuts.
I mean, White's the form guy as well, which is the crazy thing. He's probably been their best player since December, or one of them. So that shows you that we've not even mentioned Kane Thompson-Summers. So that level of depth could surely come into the equation when it comes to MK Dons. So certainly I would expect Scott Lindsay's side to come into that equation. As the people who watched last week will know, me and Ed made
I forgot about this.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
forgot about it.
So my prediction is Walsall, Notts County, and Doncaster for the top three, with Wimbledon, Crewe, MK Dons, and Port Vale in the playoffs. Ed, obviously, Walsall. For those listening on the podcast version, you can't see this. Walsall, Wimbledon, and Notts County in the top three, with Crewe, Doncaster, Salford, and Port Vale in the playoffs. So, Jack, I would like to ask you for your top three, first of all. Who would your top three be?
Be different and don't say Walsall. Be different. Go on.
I don't think I can. Because I think, obviously, the likelihood is they might loan back Freddie Draper, or they'll get a good replacement anyway. I don't think I can be different there. And I think second place, I'll give it to Notts. I think Notts will be there. And third place, I'm going to give it to Doncaster. I was thinking of Port Vale, but sort of my opinions are changing, and it seems like when Stockley's not available, Darren Moore can't have that physicality up front, and as much as Stockley's missed key chances that he should have put away, it's still that physicality which really they haven't got anyone like that. That's why Payton, I think, has struggled at Port Vale when he started at the start of the season. He hadn't got the physicality.
Well, I thought they were recruiting and Jack for two up top, but so I was actually quite, because they brought in like three strikers, didn't they? And then it's only been one out of that striker generally. Ben, your top three?
Walsall.
You can put Trammer in if you want.
I should have put Fleetwood in.
Walsall, Doncaster, and I'm going to say MK Dons to come through the pack there.
Bit of a late run for Scotland's side.
But then I fancy Notts to win the playoffs.
Are we forgetting about the rule of League Two, which is someone in the bottom eight is going to hit second half top title winning form and climb up into the top seven?
That bottom eight is so bad this year that there's no chance of that happening.
I mean, Fleetwood are just in it, Jack.
Thanks for reminding me that. I was actually going off.
I don't know. Is Keane Harrett suddenly going to hit the form of his life or something? Is this what Pete Watt's got planned? I don't know what we're expecting really with them.
We need something anyway.
Sean Rooney revitalisation incoming. Yeah.
We've not mentioned Chesterfield yet. I
just think they're a bit too hit and miss to me.
I kind of agree.
This injury crisis is a real problem for them at the moment. Which
also, with the rumours, you've got Markande, who is apparently,
maybe.
And then you've also got James Berry, but Blackpool seem to be lowballing Chesterfield for James Berry.
Well, it's just got Bloxham. I don't think Berry and Bloxham. That's a bit overkill.
I think it was Swansea who were also in for Berry. I don't know if it was last summer or, but it's just whether they keep Markande, they obviously keep Berry, and it seems like Chesterfield are picking up 3 injuries every game, and they can't keep consistency in that side.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I mean, I think maybe with a really strong last fortnight of the window, Chesterfield might get top 7. I'm not sure I see them challenging for the top 3.
They've also missed out on some striker options in the transfer window. I think the Akinyemi deal didn't happen. Yeah, I thought he would have been a really good signing for him. Versatile, strong, powerful player who would have given a different outlet for them than Mellon they didn't get. I don't think they were in for Josh Stones, but that could have been another one. So it seems like players that Chesterfield were interested in, they didn't kind of act quick enough. And if players are going out, then
well, that's the thing with Chesterfield, because I kind of feel like if everyone was there, they wouldn't need to, because I think Greg and Madden is sorted with that. The problem for them is that they had to play Drummond at the minute because they're not around. I feel like if they had that freedom to actually be able to probably play who they want when they want, it might be a little different story for them. But it's just can't know much about injury crisis. They do happen to clubs every now and then.
So playoff predictions then, Jack. Who would be? So you've already mentioned who your top three would be. Who would you say gets into the playoffs?
Are we going in order or just listing the four?
Either or.
I won't go in order because I'll probably get it wrong anyway, so I'll just list. I'll say I think Vale are going to stay in there. I think Crewe are going to stay in there. I don't think Salford are going to be in the playoffs or the top three. I don't think Bradford. I think MK Dons and what the team have I not said? Wimbledon. So Vale, Crewe, Wimbledon, and MK Dons for me.
Interesting. What about you, Ben? You said Notts County, I think.
Notts to win it. Other sides making it up. It's tough. Wimbledon are going to be in there. I think Salford might cling on. Not too sure other than that. I think it's so close between some of those sides and my dogs. Sorry, losing patience a bit there. No, but I do think Notts will get over the line this year and get promotion. I think they'll do that through the playoffs. So
there you go. Brilliant stuff. Well, listen, thanks so much for your time. A bit longer than normal, so really appreciate you guys sticking on for the extra 25 minutes or so. You can check out Ed Walker's stuff at Edward under W97, JK Analysis 7 for Jack Kershaw stuff, and at Ben DJ91 as well for his Tranmere Rovers insight. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been the EFL Debate League 2 podcast. You can get subscribed to EFL Debate on YouTube and on Spotify. That would help us out an awful lot. So go and do that if you've enjoyed this podcast. Otherwise, we'll see you again next week.